Hey, welcome to the Academy 99 podcast. I'm Bradley Grinnen. This is Chris Lee. I never let him say his own name.
It's totally okay.
Be sure to if you actually like this podcast. But if you want to go ahead in good faith, in advance of listening to it, just hit like and for sure subscribe. And of course, if you have any questions or any thoughts, throw your comments right out. We will reply to your comments because we actually care about what we're doing.
Indeed.
Or I do. I shouldn't speak for you, Chris. I'm done speaking for you, man.
You can speak for me. I do care.
That's sweet. Hey, did I tell you? I think I did tell you. Did I tell you about this hat?
No.
So this company, I come from a long line of oil truck drivers in northwestern Pennsylvania. And this company is called Cross It. Now, this is a badge that I had put on this hat. But this is the company that my grandfather drove for, my other uncle worked there, my cousins have worked there. And a buddy, they don't make them anymore, but a buddy of mine who has a hat company, this is his hat. He just didn't sew it on for me. He was like, hey, I could get you one of those patches. I was like, how? And he was like, I got a friend who makes patches. And, you see the Cross It signs everywhere. And I was like, man, I'd love a patch like that. And I was like, do it, man. So he made had the patch made and sent me the patch and the hat. So there you go.
Dude, that's pretty dope.
All I did is sew it on. And do you know how I sewed it on?
The Special Forces Foundation.
Yours is better.
Gold Star family members and I don't know about better. It's just different.
Well, this represents crude oil being sent around the country, and yours represents helping war hero veterans, family members.
I mean, there is that, yeah.
Maybe
it is better.
Hey, do you know how I sewed this patch on? I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
It's 3M automobile Velcro.
Oh, nice. So you could
nothing.
Dude, you can make a bunch of patches and just interchange them then.
Oh, maybe I have.
Dude, maybe that's a hat company. You give somebody just a regular hat and then.
So I got the patch in green too.
Dude, yeah, that's dope. And then they can interchange whatever patch they want.
Yeah, 3M is like when my car was taking it through this is how lazy I got at one point. I would take my car to get washed and detailed. And so I'd get out and, have a drink and a snack and watch my car go through and then watch them detail the interior of it. Yeah. But it kept blowing off pieces of my car. And so, powerful car wash. And so it's a nice car wash. So it's connected to an auto body shop. And so the manager of the auto body shop, asked me to drive over, and he pulled out this industrial 3M adhesive tape. And he was like, this will never blow off again. And I was like, okay. And it never did.
That's actually pretty dope.
Thank you, Omar. I appreciate it. The guy was really cool. He was like, I'm so sorry. It happens all the time. And that car is totaled.
Not from the car wash, though.
Not from the car wash, from a semi. Not my fault, not to blame. Thought I was going to die 3 different times as I spun around. 80 miles an hour, not because I was going 80, but because the truck hit me from behind. So I'm literally going backwards, looking at people that were beside me a fraction of a second ago. And I'm just like, oh, there's a whole family right there. And there they go. And there they go again. Guardrail. Anyways, we can talk about that sometime. I've got questions for you, man.
Send it.
And I would like your perspective. So one of the things that I working with executives is a broad term. It's not like it's just C-suite level executives. I work with other executives. It's not. My title used to be, because I self-titled, Fortune 500 executive coach.
Yeah.
Because that is that tends to be where my people are at. And so they're high up in a company that's, banking firms that are making decisions for small nations.
Right.
And one of the things that I'm helping them with is communication.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I mean by that. We're talking about people who have very high ethical, moral value standards,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to be run of the mill,
Right.
particularly with the people that directly report to them.
Right. Right.
They want to be a great boss. And so communication is always a concept that we're working on philosophically, 30,000 foot big picture view, and then in the micro, in the details about how to become. I mean, if you increase your communication skills by 4%, it can have a massive effect on your entire business within that company.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Your silo. So I had some questions for that, around that for you. And out for anyone listening, I'll share some of the things I work with people on, but in terms of communication, but in general, because I think yours will be different. Because you don't have to. I believe it's probably important. You don't have to get buy-in in the military as much as you might in a corporation or a company, or if you're an entrepreneur and you've got people working for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine you still want that buy-in, not just, hey, you're here. I mean, well, we can make it just like a business owner. Oh, you're here. Yeah. This is how I used to manage, by the way, when I was young and had student workers working for me. Yeah. And it was terrible, but I'd be like, I didn't focus on my communication skills or my managerial skills. I was just like, I got 20 other students lined up. If you can't do this to my liking, I'll just go get one of them.
I mean, that's a technique.
It's poor technique. It is a technique, right? So when it comes to communication, I'll get specific with my questions. And my first question for you is, what are the core tenets for communication, for effective communication, for you?
For me, first thing that comes to mind is I try to be a really good listener, more so than a talker. That's probably due to some of my introvert tendencies, but I think listening is a technique that can be learned, and it's a skill that can be developed and mastered. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes when having conversation, we're really just waiting for our turn to talk, as opposed to listening what the other person is actually saying. And sometimes they're saying something, but that's not really what they're actually trying to say. They're not really beating around the bush, so to speak, but rather they're communicating something to you with words that don't necessarily align with what they're communicating. And so being able to tune into that, being able to like actually listen and absorb whatever it is they're actually trying to communicate, is something I try to do first. And I think that's pretty vital in the communication sector.
Yeah, I mean, it's cliche because it's true, which is, I end up saying over and over again, that's cliche because it's true. It is. I have a couple things I do in that situation, and here's why. It is so cliche. Don't wait for your turn to talk to respond. I have to remind myself that when you and I are having conversations. I have to just constantly remind myself, don't think of the next great thing to say, or more often than not, it's like, stop thinking about the thing to make Chris laugh and listen to what he's saying. But knowing that it's true, I still find myself in defense mode often. Like, it is, it's hard to be totally present with people.
Yeah. Yep.
It just is. And so, you have a great friendship when that happens naturally.
Yeah.
At times.
Yeah.
or a great relationship, could be working relationship. One of the things that I do and that I teach people to do is to actively set your mind into a mode to begin asking questions while the person's talking, because it helps you listen actively.
Yeah.
I wonder what he meant by that. I think I know, but what if I don't? Like,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
one thing I can ask for some clarity on?
Right.
Is the first thing.
Right.
The second piece, which is pretty well known, is to do active listening response.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, if it's okay, can I just speak back to you what I believe I heard, and then you can confirm. So you're saying,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it lowers so many defenses. Now,
Yep.
it makes conversations longer, but
Yeah.
it does come down to what's the point of the conversation, and you can't always have those sessions.
Right.
Sometimes you got
Right.
to have 3 minutes of just like, go do this thing because I said do it, and I will explain it to you. I promise it's worth it.
Right. Yeah.
That's a reality, but I love that, man. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Listening.
Another thing I try to do, particularly if I'm coaching somebody or whatever, I try to pause after they're done talking. If they're asking for a response, I pause and I actually think through what it is that I'm trying to communicate, because clear communication is important. Because what I'm saying, they might interpret incorrectly, and so I try to be relatively careful with the words that I say in order to, as best as I can, get the point that I'm trying to get across. Now, I've had to adjust my technique a little bit, because in the military, communication has to be very quick and like to the point. So it's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is the tasks that everyone needs to do in order to accomplish said thing. Are there any questions? No, go do. And so coming from an environment where I'm used to that, where it's just like, all right, what's the mission? What do I need to do? All right, I'm going to go do it. Stop talking. Whereas oftentimes in like the civilian sector, things like to be discussed very thoroughly, even after a decision has been made, and a plan of action has developed. People still like to talk about it and still kind of digest and back and forth a little bit. And I had to get used to doing things that way some, because from my experience, it's like, all right, we got the mission, we got our task org, I'm going to get up and go. But nowadays it's like people are still talking. So I got to sit back down and get comfortable and listen to some more discussion, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just something I had to get used to.
I mean, there are pros and cons. There are times I
sense.
don't want to discuss things anymore.
And that was a little bit of an adjustment period, but we're getting through it.
I get it. It's similar. You have to have that in military. I see it. It's sort of like, and you'll get this. I'm going to run in front of you. Don't shoot me. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. And I can't ask. I'm not going to ask questions. A little insider Battlefield 2042 there. So I get it. Because the amount of times I've just killed you is you probably can't count them by now.
Right.
But yeah, that makes sense, and I can see that adjustment. Was that hard? What do you hate about it?
Wasn't it? That's an easier question to answer. Is what do I hate about it? It wasn't necessarily hard. It just 10 years in the Army, where it's like there isn't going to be a whole lot of discussion. It's like, let's get to the point. Let's develop a plan of action. Let's move. That's what I was used to. And what I hate about it is I do like to just like, all right, we've understood the problem now. We've now come up with a solution. Let's go solve the problem.
Yeah, very different kind of relationship building.
For sure.
Between the two paradigms.
Right, exactly. And where some people aren't necessarily even looking for a solution. They just need to get it out.
It's a brilliant point. Because one of the things I've had to do with these high standard, high value execs is coach them to the place where they go, oh, I'm oversharing and I'm letting people overshare. Like there's a time for that. And then there's a time for, and this gets into like the framework I have for communication. Like if someone's like, I got to upgrade, just really simple. I got to upgrade my communication skills. I know I do. Okay, cool. Yeah. I've got 3 questions. We'll go through them today. I got these 3 questions you want to answer, and then 3 questions after that. Yeah. The 3 questions are for clear communication. The follow-up questions are for relationship building. And so it's really determining the context. Yeah. So we can dive into that. But yeah, it's you overshare because you want everyone to feel like they're a part of the team. Right. And there are other ways to do that beyond verbalization. Sure. Empowerment, contracts, just, and I'll go on and on, but I'm not going to go on and on. But I totally get that. Okay. So actually listening, which foundational. So did I tell you about our mutual friend who I used to work with? He's larger, on the larger side. You know who I'm talking about?
Keep talking. I'll probably discern.
I love him to death. And yeah. But he was on the larger side, and we would play. This is when we were both youth pastors, and we would play football, disc frisbee, ultimate frisbee. Yeah. And he was really quick, and he very athletic, like shockingly athletic. And so these kids would be like, "Oh, I'll guard him," and then he'd blow them away. But we were talking about it, and it was actually a vulnerable moment where he said he was vulnerable about his weight. And I said, yeah, man, but what amazes me is how fast you are. His calves are like granite boulders, right? And I go, it shocks me how fast you are. And he goes, silence. And I was like, you all right? He goes, why would you say that? And I was like, because you're just so freaking fast, man. Right. And he goes, I'm vulnerable right now. And you're being basically a dick. I was like, fast, F-A-S-T. And he was like, oh, I thought you were saying I was so fat. It went on a lot longer than what I just described. But I was just like, I don't understand. I know I'm paying him a compliment. Actually, the foundation of listening and then communicating back and forth to make sure you're hearing what you think you're hearing, because rarely do we hear what we think we hear. Right. Yeah. That's not my opinion. That's biological fact. Same thing with seeing. Our eyes, our field of vision does not see everything. Our brain is actually filling in lots of blank spaces, which is great. Keeps us from like running into other cars. Yeah. But that piece. So listening, that was a long way for a recap. Look at that, I got my thumbs up. So listening, clarifying, and what was the one you just said?
You clearly weren't listening.
I clearly wasn't.
So I mentioned taking a pause in between what they said and what I said, and then figuring out what kind of communication is necessary in the moment. Sometimes it's like it doesn't need a whole lot of discussion. It's like, all right, mission, action, let's go. Versus this isn't really about coming to a solution. This is about discussing what's going on,
Yeah. Context is king. Mm-hmm. So, just some self-awareness. For me, if you've got to communicate something important, there needs to be some self-reflection and some time put in before the conversation. If you're not doing that, it's clearly not that important to you. It might be critical, but it's not important enough to you to spend 10 minutes getting everything down on paper, answering some questions, so that sort of like a screen for what it is you're wanting to ask, or what you're wanting to communicate. Anything else with communication for you? It just jumps out to you.
Yeah. Trying to think of some other things in regards to communication. I know my style. I often, like, looking back on, maybe other recordings and stuff, I'll like make a point, elaborate as much as I can on it, maybe include a story, and then circle back and reiterate the point. And I get kind of annoyed with myself sometimes, because part of me thinks that is super inefficient, that I'm, making a complete circle with this whole dialogue. But sometimes that's necessary. It's in the military, I would skip the whole, elaborate. It's just like, this is my point, drive on. Versus now it's, I make my point. I'm doing it right now, actually. I make my point, elaborate, and then circle back.
I was going to say, you're doing effective communication right now. It's interesting in a world of social media reels where you don't really want to circle back and you don't want to elaborate too much. I do think one thing about communicating is checking in often enough to know if you need to elaborate or not, and how much elaboration needs. Because, if you're going to do a 30-second, 60-second, 90-second reel,
sure,
you don't have time to say it 15 different ways. But sometimes I'm sure you've been in meetings where you're like, you said the point, I got it the first time. And this is the fifth example you're given, which, by the way, I'm probably the worst offender. Because I love metaphors and analogies. But yeah, it isn't necessary. So it's just having that awareness. Everybody with me? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Yeah, everyone is? Cool. I'll stop talking about that now. Highly effective as well.
Yeah. And some people are just talkers too. I've worked with people that they kind of say their point and then talk for 25 minutes, and it kind of bleeds over into all of these different other things, and then they kind of say their point again. And sometimes I can get impatient because I think I understood their point in the first 30 seconds, and I want to, like, all right, yeah, I got it, but I got to catch myself and say, maybe this is about them getting it all out of their head, so they can focus and get it all out,
Yeah. I think context again, like, is this, if it's a superior, if it's someone you directly report to, don't say that. Don't say, hey, I got it. Not in that moment, maybe in a review, 360 review or something. If it's your intimate monogamous partner in life, it's just listening for however long you got to listen and not interrupting them. If it is a subordinate or someone who directly reports to you, depends on the context. You're like, I really think I got it, right?
Yeah.
But if you got to cut that off sometimes, because they always do it, that's another, like, wait to a review, know, and have that conversation. Be like, here's what would really help me effectively serve you is for you to get to your point, make it, and then ask me if I got it. Whatever that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. With my kids, depends on how many nerves I have left. But I want to cultivate in my house conversation culture. I just want to, and there are times where shut the door so the cat doesn't get out and then we spend an hour chasing around the neighborhood. They don't even know why I said shut the door. Just shut the door, and I'll explain it to you afterwards, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are other times when it's like, let's just spill it, let it all out. I do like the power of a pause in a conversation where I used to be so insecure. I'm still insecure in lots of ways, but I used to be so insecure. I feel fortunate to have made it this far in life, because I would fill every blank space of a conversation with something because I wasn't okay with it. I wasn't comfortable with it. Too concerned about, how does this person feel? Is this person having a good time? Does this person like me? I need this person to like me, or my life's going to suck, which is a really disempowering place to be. And so all these things that we talk about are hard learned lessons.
Right.
So but just asking a question and then not explaining the question, even if it's a 30-second pause, which feels like forever in a conversation.
Right.
And pausing, you said it earlier, pausing before you respond. Sometimes I'll pause to think about my response, and then I'll wait a little bit longer just to see if more is going to come out, because sometimes it's like the dam breaks.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have more to say that they were hiding. And that's not good or bad. It's not a judgment. That's just, obviously they didn't feel comfortable enough, and now they do. Now they've got more to say.
Exactly. I think the other added benefit to intentionally pausing before your response in kind of all situations is that when that really stressful, frustrating situation shows up, you've developed the habit of pausing before response. And in those moments when emotions are starting to elevate and you want to respond in a quick jab to the throat type of verbiage, if you can pause and avoid that, then you could potentially prevent the destruction of the relationship, And so practicing it always helps in those moments when you really need it, for it to show up.
Yeah, this is going to sound ridiculous. Ready? But
Send it.
Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul really helped me with that. Like, I was always afraid to have conversations that included conflict, because I don't like conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't. And the people who do, there's some kind of imbalance going on. Right? But you have to have conflict. You have to face conflict when it's there. You don't have to drum it up.
Mm-hmm.
What that book did for me was help me detach emotionally from every important conversation. Because the more critical the situation for the communication, the more emotionally attached you're going to be. And the more emotionally attached you are to it going one way or the other, the less productive you are as a participant in that conversation. And I don't think communication in conflict conversations are about winning and losing. You don't have to have a winner or a loser. In fact, I think if you are shooting for the win-win, it's best. But if it was a game, the loser is the person who's more emotionally invested into that conversation at the moment, because you lose rational, analytical, logical thinking. I'm not saying be a robot. I'm not saying don't have empathy. Mm-hmm. I'm saying don't be so invested in a particular outcome that you can't handle the reality that is happening in front of you. And I remember vividly having this first conversation I ever had like this with my boss at the time. And it felt like a hostile conversation because he felt like a hostile person. Right. But I had just been through that book. Like, I read through it twice, just back to back, just read it again, and decided, no, there's a conversation that has to be had where I've got to communicate. I might not be the right person for this position because of who I am and who you are, and we don't match.
Right.
And you ever been so angry, your eyes are shaking, like you can't help it, like your whole vision's going like this? I was like that right from the get-go, because he initiated the conversation in a pretty friction-filled way. And I remember just saying, like, you know what? Zero connection to an outcome. Let me just say what I think, how I feel, and communicate what I need.
Yeah.
And so I said some things, not mean spirited. I just said some facts.
Right.
I feel
Right.
like you're an incredibly difficult person to work for. I feel like you're lucky I'm here because no one else would work for you. And I'm not saying that in a mean way, but you need to know that. Like if I leave here and I don't communicate that to you, I'll regret it.
Yeah.
And my eyes stopped shaking. But then there was a pause. There was a pause after every statement I made and after everything he made. And we just stared at each other sometimes for like a minute. And I was like, I really, and the response went back and forth, and both of us with like, I really need to think about this. And just full circle so people aren't like, well, what happened? We both decided, that was a Friday, we both decided, let's take the weekend and Monday, let's have the conversation again.
Yeah.
And Monday we came in and, some minds had changed, some hearts had changed on both sides. And we said, let's keep going and see what we can do with this company, because it was a small company at the time.
Yeah.
And we did great things with it, but it was hard. It was hard not to be emotionally invested. So kudos to your pause. That's brilliant. And why didn't I say that? I know that. I don't even have that on my list of things. Let me, if you're cool, let me walk through this pre-communication screening. It's 6 questions total. And if you're cool, I'll walk through those and I would love your feedback on that. And it's really simple, but you'll get it. You'll be amazed how many people don't do this. So for me, I give this to every one of my clients, and they have to, before they communicate, if it's important, they have to write out their answers. So the first thing is, what needs to be communicated? Like, just what is the information that needs to be transferred from one brain to another brain, from one body to another body? And have that written down and have that clear, and only what needs to be communicated. So you actually want to get really precise here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And explicit with, these are the things that need to be communicated. Pretty simple. Doesn't happen enough.
Right.
That's it. The second question then is, why does this need to be communicated? And you don't answer that in the first one. So you stop yourself, because it's really easy to go into that. Wait until you know exactly what needs to be communicated. Then, why does this need to be communicated to this specific person?
Right.
Or to these specific people? Right. And I don't think any of these questions are more important than the other one, but this one's critical. It's just, why am I communicating? Because it tells you what not to say as well.
Yeah. Yep.
It will infer how to communicate it. It will infer the context. If this is what's need to be communicated, and this is why, if it's an edict or if it's a conversation.
Right.
And then the third question is, what do you need to know from them? Is there any specific thing you need to know from them?
Yeah. No, I think that's solid. And I'm going to steal pretty much all of that. Because
everyone else can
super
too.
Smart. Yeah. It's, that simple tool, particularly if you're working in like a work environment, that's huge. But even if you have to have like that hard conversation with a spouse or partner or something like that, it sounds silly, because some folks are like, just let conversations happen organically. Yeah, sure, there's a time and place for that. But if it's like vital things that need to be discussed, that little pre-screening is on point, because it's exactly what you would like to have expressed, the why behind it, and any additional information that needs to be garnered.
What do you need to? Here's another way to ask that third question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to know from them? Mm-hmm. So I would answer this as well. So maybe it's 4 questions, but I think it's the same question. Is, what do you want to see happen as a result of this conversation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Right. Desired end state. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds so much better. I'm taking that. What's the desired end state? Thanks.
Yeah.
Good thing we work together.
Right.
Then that's about communication.
Yeah.
Now, about communication style is three other questions. The first is, how do I want them to feel?
Hmm.
And this is why I say communication style, because this is, you can't control how someone feels, but you can influence it, and that
Sure.
matters. So if you can
Yeah.
influence it as much, you want them to feel totally on board. Do you want them to feel discouraged and quit? Do you want them to feel like they want to take the reins on this? Do you want them to
Right.
feel compliant? What do you actually want them to feel? That's important. When the second one is, when they walk away from this conversation, what do you want them to repeat was communicated?
Right.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Then the deeper third question is, what do you want them to say about the actual conversation to other people when you're not around?
Yeah. That's a good one too. Yeah.
That's all about communication style.
Mhm.
Those three questions I think are way deeper, and also they're influential. I don't know if they're more influential than the first set of questions, but they will affect how you communicate more than the first three questions.
Yeah. No, I buy that too. I like those three questions as well,
Take them.
because it's really setting you up for how you want the end state to go, and then after after the conversation as well.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a priming of oneself for the conversation. What's my intent? It's like, again, what's the desired end state? Not just result of the conversation or action plans based on the conversation, but like, yeah, how will it be received? How do I want it to be received? I like that a lot. It's spot on.
You can't control those things, which is why
Can't.
I immediately call them deeper. You can for sure influence them.
Right.
And all six of those questions you can hone your skill in.
Yeah.
This is simple. This is a learnable skill.
Yeah.
Communication's a learnable skill.
For sure.
Everything's a learnable skill. Some people are
Right.
just born with more talent or have developed patterns that serve them better than others, but
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah. No, it's awesome, and it reminds me of the culminating training exercise to graduate the Q course. It's called Robin Sage. It's essentially a giant LARPing exercise throughout the entire state of North Carolina.
Oh,
And
I've heard.
yeah, and so as like potential Green Berets, you're put into this training scenario that again is spanning the state of North Carolina, and you have to interact with people that are role players that are pretending to be natives of a different country, and you have to interact with them and work with them. But that whole process is like, I have to get their trust in order for them to want to work with me, in order for us to achieve an objective. And so a lot of the planning process was like, how are we going to present this information? How do we want the people that we're working with to receive it and feel about it as we're moving through the whole thing? And so it's a big LARP fest where you're pretending to shoot guns and stuff like that, but a majority of it is communication and building rapport. And there is potential for catastrophic loss of rapport, and if that's the case, you and your team are in danger, because who knows, the role players may start attacking you, and that is primarily due to communication styles and how information was received and that type of thing.
It fascinates me, man. Like my first buddy who joined Special Forces like 20 years ago,
Yeah.
when he passed Q course, he did two of them, by the way. He
Yeah.
was in the Air Force,
Yep.
passed, And then the Army was like, no, you should come to us, post career. There's so many more options. You won't have to do the Q course. We've already cleared it. And he went back in and they were like, guess what? You're doing the Q course here because I'm sure it's tougher. He was pissed. But when he told me about Sage Robin, is it?
Robin Sage, yeah.
Robin Sage. I was blown away. Dude, I was so fascinated as a little kid who grew up playing Army all the time. I was just like, are you for real? They do this? You take over a whole town and then you guys are running around the state? And he's like, yep. That's insane. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think this goes this whole conversation about communication, we work as executives, but sometimes my conversation around communication is to a client for his wife,
right,
or for her husband, or for their kids. If it's an entrepreneur, especially a solopreneur, that's all about clientele, having conversations and communicating with clientele. They're just powerful questions, powerful tools that I in real-time self-reflection, I'm grateful we're having this conversation because I need to implement these more and more of my interactions with other, what do they call them? Oh, human beings.
Right. And I think something to keep in mind too, when communicating with others and receiving communication from them is not everyone understands that every other individual is the main character of their own story. And if you can remember that, sometimes it puts things into better context, whereas like because I'm me, I feel like the main character of this story that I'm living, and everyone else, not to like downgrade or degrade their individuality, but they feel like supporting roles in this movie that I'm playing. And that's just like natural human nature. That's like,
because they are,
we can't, right. But then everybody else is thinking that about me as well, And so if we can remember that, I think that helps.
Why do you always get to say all the best stuff?
Because you slow pitch it to me, man, and then I can.
That's so good, man. It's so helpful.
Yeah.
I'm speaking communication skills. There's about 13 different things I want to say about that, but I don't think it's effective or helpful, so I'm not going to say it. But that's great. Yeah. That's huge. Although I will say, if you want to read a good book on that, 1,000,000 Miles in 1,000 Years by Donald Miller, great book for that. Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey gets deeper into writing your story and being the hero of your own journey.
Yeah.
Sweet. Hey man, thanks for chatting with me today. I appreciate it.
Dude, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate these times.
So we still do have some spots available for the Limitless Retreat. Chris, myself, Wendy Myers. It's going to be we're keeping it pretty small. I don't want to say intimate because it's not that kind of retreat, but it's going to be an intimate environment where all three of us will be coaching in person with everyone who's there, walking through not just physical fitness, nutrition, health, mental, trauma related, nervous system regulation, goal orientation, achieving goals, setting goals, all of Chris's excellent exercises that he walks people through, purpose and future planning. And then just, which is my favorite, just straight up troubleshooting.
Yeah.
Real time coaching around real issues that people need perspective on. So if you want to come, it's $2,887 to get a seat there. Because you're going to see that on the website. But let us know. We'll shoot you the information. Just make a comment on YouTube or look us up on.
And
Go ahead.
Yeah. In addition to that, though, not only do you get the retreat, but it's 6 months of follow up coaching from the three
Yeah.
of us. So pretty good deal.
Pretty great deal, because you're not going to get
Yeah.
6 months of coaching at that price from many of us.
Right.
So,
Right.
but it's totally doable with three of us for that 6 months. So
Yeah.
that's why you get that as well. And plus, we just wanted to completely over deliver, and that's what we're doing. So if you're interested, I know it's coming up soon, but we still have a few spots. So, Coach Chris Lee on Instagram, bradleygrinnenofficial on Instagram, and shoot us a message, and we'll get you the information and see if you're fit. I'll get on the phone with you. Chris will get on the phone with you. Real short conversation, ask you a couple questions, see if you're fit. But we've already got folks going, and we've got a few spots left. Also, we've got Academy 99, which is $9.99 a month for 2 coaching sessions with Chris and I every other week. And it is group coaching, but you're not going to get coaching from us. I don't think anybody has this kind of a deal, but it's a passion project of you and I, and we just kind of wanted to see what would it do if we made it available. There's no reason, no excuse, period, why other than like I just don't want to change. So I call that, base camp. It's a lot of the basics, but if you just want to get a taste of working with us, that's the place to start for sure.
100%.
But for those of you who like to bungee jump, sign up for the retreat, because that's like a bungee jump into our coaching for sure. Anyways, appreciate everyone who has subscribed. Again, if you appreciate this information, like and subscribe. If you have questions, fire away. Let us know in the comments. I will get to those. If I respond to those, assume it's Chris's response as well, but don't expect to see Chris responding on there. Unless they say, hey, Chris, can you go respond? Do you even know what our YouTube page is?
Yeah, Academy 99.
Okay, sweet. All right. All right. Appreciate you, man. Let's chat next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it, man. We'll catch you later.
All right, see ya.
Later.